Melissa, you've spent a lot of time researching possible solutions to some of the major natural hazard events that we've had in the world. And one of them is wildfires, which we've seen more and more of. Can you tell us what ideas you have that might help us solve this problem?
So when looking to how we might address it, I didn't look to how humans had solved this problem, but how nature already has. In the natural world, there are whole classes of species that have evolved to live with fire. Fire is integrated into their reproductive processes, which makes sense because when a fire comes along, like many natural hazards, it releases the nutrients, it creates space, it creates light. So it's a perfect opportunity for growth. And of course, it's not just other species that have looked at fire in a different way, but different cultures. So when we look to the indigenous cultures of the world, when we look to the vernacular cultures, the architectural cultures, we find very materially distinct cultures that don't put the emphasis on the physical thing, but on the intelligence and the information behind the thing, and in the process of recovery, rapid recovery to the event, which when you're in a scenario, when I looked at the worst cases for wildfires, some of these events, we're talking about wildfire fronts that can literally travel at nearly the speed of sound. We're talking at intensities that can incinerate pretty much any material that is biotic, that is not geological, that it touches. So in that scenario, you can't necessarily save a building in its entirety. But what you can do is you can look at how you would design and build that structure in a way that both helps preserve life, it reduces the probability of the loss of life. It simultaneously, you can look to protect the things that are most precious to people. And importantly, one of the things a lot of people don't understand about wildfires is that because of the fact that when we build today, we build with a lot of chemicals, a lot of things that are very harmful to the environment when they're released. And in a wildfire, they're not just released in the locality, but they rise up in the smoke that comes from the wildfire, and they travel for huge distances. They travel literally, if the smoke column reaches the stratosphere, they're traveling around the world. That's microplastics, that's toxic chemicals of various kinds that are dangerous to life on many levels, from respiratory health to reproduction, you name it. So I've gone back to the drawing board, and although on the surface of it, some of the ideas are very radical, philosophically, they're no different to what our ancient ancestors did. And they're no different to what the likes of the Aborigines, the Native Americans did. It's just that, of course, today we have a whole suite of technologies, a whole suite of things that we can use to actually create these structures and create these infrastructures in completely different ways. So that's been my approach. To the best of my knowledge, I'm the very first researcher to have done that. So I don't know anyone who's actually spliced up these different areas as I have. And I think it's a really exciting area. And although it's exciting to the wildland urban interface, which is, as it says on the tin, it's the space between the urban, the built environment, and the wildland, the learning from it actually applies to our urban habitat as well. So when we look, for example, at the sort of scenarios that might emerge from things like creating timber structures, some of the people listening to this will have heard of mass timber. All of the learning that you find in the study of wildfire in the wildland has applicability, because at the level of physics, at the level of science, it's the same realm.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much.